Welcome.
Welcome to the Everythink podcast, and in this episode I'll be reviewing the Big Finish era of Class 1.3 titled Tell Me You Love Me. But before I get there, it's time for the cast list. So we have, and it's for the entirety of Volume 1 like the previous two episodes have been. So that includes Greg Austin as Charlie, Fady El-Sayed as Ram, Sophie Hopkins as April, Vivian Opera as Tanya, Georgia Renzo as Mateusz, Catherine Kelly as Miss Quill, Rue Caulfield as Miss Vanderberg, Scott Harron as Jason, Reese Isaac Jones as Thomas, Deirdre Mullins as Mab, Joe Shear as Aubrey, Jasmine M. Stewart as the Mayor, Liz Sutherland as Dr. Yan, and Gavin Swift as Boris. The writer and director of Tell Me You Love Me was Scott Hancock. The synopsis is that the school day has ended. Charlie and Mateusz find themselves alone, though not quite as alone as they first believed. 3 little words could mean the difference between life and death, and Quill is the only person they can turn to. Tell Me You Love Me was released in August 2018. My opinion on Tell Me You Love Me is that I loved hearing more from Charlie, Mateusz and Miss Quill, because obviously this is the first story they appeared. I liked the sequences where the main cast couldn't stop speaking, and I enjoyed the opening scene. But without further ado, here's my review of the Big Finish era of Class 1.3 titled Tell Me You Love Me. Charlie collects his belongings from his locker. Mateusz and Charlie kiss. Charlie and Mateusz are interrupted by a noise. Mateusz reassures Charlie multiple times that no one is going to walk in on them being intimate. Mateusz tells Charlie that he's gained the ability of being able to stop speaking. We then have the title sequence. Charlie attempts to calm down Mateusz. Mateusz comments on Charlie's appearance. Mateusz has forgotten Charlie's name. Charlie reminds Mateusz of his name. Charlie calls Miss Quill. Charlie tells Miss Quill about Mateusz being unable to stop speaking. Miss Quill agrees to help Mateusz. Miss Quill reminds Charlie of the work-life balance that teachers struggle to juggle. Miss Quill comments on Charlie being half naked. Miss Quill comments on Charlie's lack of self-control when Mateusz is involved. Mateusz questions Charlie's decision to evolve. Miss Quill, Mateusz stops being unable to not speak. Charlie starts to speak without stopping. Charlie, Mateusz and Miss Quill learn this. Mateusz and Charlie recount hearing a noise to Miss Quill. Charlie expresses his true feelings about Miss Quill to her and Mateusz. Mateusz and Miss Quill leave Charlie to continue talking. Miss Quill asks Mateusz multiple questions about what happened to him as well as what Charlie is currently experiencing. Miss Quill warns Mateusz not to reunite with Charlie. Charlie speaks to the entity controlling him. Miss Quill is hunting for this entity. Miss Quill mentions the space-time tears mentioned throughout Class Season 1. Mateusz, and that's of the TV show obviously. Mateusz informs Miss Quill of Charlie's distress. Mateusz checks on Charlie. Miss Quill and Charlie argue about the entity causing Charlie to continuously speak. Charlie, with advice from Mateusz, chooses to repeatedly say Mateusz, stop himself from speaking so quickly. Miss Quill reveals to Mateusz and Charlie that the entity is currently residing itself inside Charlie's body. Miss Quill orders Charlie and Mateusz to regain contact with each other. This idea fails. Miss Quill now orders Mateusz and Charlie to kiss. Charlie regains his normal speaking pace. Mateusz continually speaks again. Mateusz calms himself down by only thinking about Charlie. Miss Quill explains to Charlie how the entity continues to switch between him and Mateusz. Miss Quill tells Charlie the words that must be spoken for Matesh to speak normally again. The entity switches between Matesh and Charlie multiple times. Charlie explains Miss Quill's theory for the entity switch between them to Matesh. Miss Quill threatens Matesh. Miss Quill chooses to take the entity from Matesh. Miss Quill insults Charlie and the human race. Miss Quill expresses her disgust and displeasure in seeing Matesh and Charlie being intimate with each other. Miss Quill explains the entity's purpose to Charlie and Matesh. Matesh takes the entity from Miss Quill. Miss Quill believes that when Matesh forgets Charlie, Matesh will be dying. Miss Quill stops Charlie from taking the entity from Matesh. Miss Quill challenges Matesh and Charlie's understanding of the words "I love you." Charlie reminds Miss Quill what the entity is doing to Matesh. Miss Quill mentions the lifespan of a human to Charlie. Charlie takes the entity from Matesh. Charlie motivates Miss Quill to help him and Matesh sort out the entity. Charlie mentions the last day on Rodeo to Matesh. Miss Quill expresses her dislike of Charlie to his face. Miss Quill takes the entity from Charlie. Miss Quill speaks to the entity again. The entity communicates with Miss Quill. The entity asks Miss Quill about her first murder. Matesh interrupts Miss Quill's conversation with the entity. Miss Quill orders Charlie to go home. Miss Quill references the object inside her head, stopping her from having free will and forcing her to protect Charlie when required. Charlie calls Miss Quill to warn her about being alone with the entity and suggests she should return home so him and Matesh can help her with the entity situation. Miss Quill hangs up. Miss Quill rings a stranger so she doesn't die alone. The entity is transferred to the stranger. Miss Quill recounts her actions to Matesh and Charlie. Charlie's disgusted at Miss Quill's recent actions involving the entity. Charlie and Matesh kiss. Charlie knows Matesh loves him without Matesh needing to tell him so. And then that's the end of the actual episode. Now we're on to the behind the scenes interviews. So Scott Hancock, as I mentioned, is the writer-director of Tell Me You Love Me, talks to Catherine, who plays Miss Quill, and Greg, who plays Charlie, about getting their roles for the TV show. Catherine mentions the rest of the main cast. So that will be Fidel Ciad as Ram, Sophie Hopkins as April, and Vivian Opera as Tanya. As well as the Hoodiverse's casting director, which I think his name is Andy Pryor. Catherine mentions that the TV show was shot across 6 months. Greg and Catherine reveal how they felt returning to the roles of Charlie and Miss Quill. Greg mentions how he felt recording this episode, as does Catherine. Catherine demonstrates her differing voice when voicing the entity. Catherine and Greg express their delight for not having to learn the lines. A Volume 2 story is mentioned. Obviously I'll be reviewing that Volume 2 story at some point in the near future. Catherine mentions episode 7 of the TV show, which is the Miss Quill-centric episode. Go and check that out, as I've reviewed all of Class TV, and obviously I'm working my way through the Big Finish side at the moment. That's Jordan Renzo, who plays Matesh, mentions how he has found reprising the role of Matesh. Greg and Jordan mention how they have found being boyfriends in audio. Jordan reveals that the kiss in episode 1 of the TV show was unscripted. Greg mentions they're not being able to not stop speaking sections of this episode. Jordan and Greg explain their experiences with fan fiction, and fan-made Funko figures are mentioned also. So yes, that's it for my review of the Big Finish side of Class 1.3, titled Tell Me You Love Me. The next time on the Everything podcast, in a slight change to what I had planned, I'll be reviewing Tales of the TARDIS and the Pyramids of Mars. Now, Pyramids of Mars is a 4th Doctor story, so I actually didn't think I would be reviewing it at all, actually. But it's a 4th Doctor and Sarah Jane. Obviously there'll be more about that in the next episode. So that's what the actual story is, and features Sutekh, who was the villain and is the villain in the 2-part finale of Doctor Who Season 1. Obviously I've already reviewed The Legend of Ruby Sunday, so go check that out. And obviously the Empire of Death hasn't come out yet, so when that does, the review will be written and recorded, and you'll see that in a couple of days' time. So yes, and Tales of the TARDIS is an omnibus. So how Classic Who used to be, is it would be weekly, like modern Doctor Who is, but they would have cliffhangers at the end, so it'd be 4 6-part stories instead of the most 2. Actually, no, 3. 6 is the most, and that was for a COVID issue, which was Series 13, otherwise known as Flux. So yeah, there's that. So Tales of the TARDIS I'll be reviewing. Unfortunately, this is a UK only exclusive, but I'll be reviewing it, so you will actually know what's what's going on. If you want to check other Tales of the TARDIS, all of the Tales of the TARDIS episodes, including the Pyramids of Mars, and you are in the UK, go on to BBC iPlayer and you could find them there. But back to this episode, let me know what you thought about Tell Me You Love Me if you listened to it. If you didn't, you can put both your thoughts on those in the comments below, as well as anything else you want me to cover on the channel. So it could be a TV show or movie suggestion, it could be a book, it could be a newspaper, it could be a comic, it could be an article, it could be any news about a TV show or movie you would like me to cover, or something completely different. Put those in the comments below as well. And remember, you can also like, comment and subscribe. And that's it for this episode of the Everything Podcast. Goodbye.